Morning, Dan, and in for Amy this morning is Sean from Elmwood Park.
I'm excited about this next interview. I really am.
Well, he's one of the great intellects in the West, honestly. Great academic. You can always catch his stuff at National Review online. You can catch his stuff at the Hoover Institute. And he has had, to me, the best synthesis of Trump's appeal offered this campaign cycle to date. And this was, way, way back in the primary, where he said, basically, I'm not quoting him exactly, but paraphrasing, Victor Davis Hanson saying, Trump's appeal is essentially this. He's saying to the American people, all these elites in academia and media and entertainment and business and government, I know them all, and they're even worse than you think. And, and I'm the guy that's going to pull back the curtain and take the fight to them.
You're going to let me ask him a question?
Yeah, I will. I will. Victor Davis Hanson, who joins us now. Victor Davis Hanson, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And so has the campaign turned out to be as dreary as you anticipated it would be? I note a recent piece you wrote about the 9 lives of Donald Trump. Has that surprised you, or did you expect that he would have this staying power?
No, I thought he would, because he appeals for what you just articulated. People are very angry that people in academia, the media, celebrities, politicians, they're not as competent as we're told. They say things like there's 57 states or corpsmen for corpsmen. They can't do things like the Hoover Dam here in California. We have high-speed rail. It's just a total, to quote Trump, a total disaster. And people feel they're above the law. We have Hillary's examples. They're hypocritical. If you look at John Kerry, a guy like that moves his yacht from Massachusetts to Rhode Island to avoid his property tax, or Al Gore tries to dump his cable money losing to Al Jazeera, who's funded by oil sales, which he says are bad. So I could go on, but it's hypocrisy, incompetence, arrogance, and that's a powerful tool. That being said, it's about 45% of the electorate. So Trump's dilemma, and I think everybody's seen that, is that he needs another 6 to 7 points, and he's lost about 15% of the Republican base, and he's doing okay in the Republican calculus with Latinos, so-called Latinos. He's about the same as Romney and McCain with blacks, not much worse, but he's got to come up with his 5 to 7%, and so that's his dilemma, and he's trying to pivot. He's trying to clean up his language. The easiest way to do it would be to get new voters out and get back to the Democratic level in their party of about 92% of your party supporting him. So if he had 92% of the Republicans supporting him and he's appealed to these so-called Reagan Democrats, the election's would be very close. And that's what he's trying to do, obviously, in the last 75 days.
Victor, I'm a big fan, and I have a question. I normally don't do this, so I'll never get to speak to you again. So I want to ask you a little bit more of a I know you're a historian, and I know you're writing a book about World War II, and I had relatives that fought, and I've always been interested in it. And here's my thing: I believe that Saul Alinsky was a Soviet sympathizer. I believe he was more than just someone who tried to preach Marxism. I think he had connections there, and what I never really hear is the connection between Hillary and Saul Alinsky. And my question to you is, did they win? Is it working? Are we completely infiltrated? Is it this Keynesian quagmire, Soviet socialism? Is this it? Are we just on the road to serfdom?
Well, before Alinsky came on the scene 2,500 years ago, people like Aristotle and Plato had warned people that democracy has a time bomb built into it, and that is that when you start redistributing income and you have people who depend on government, that's always going to get larger, and the people who supply the money is always going to get smaller until you get to a Venezuela or a Cuban or a Detroit or a situation like that. And so, yeah, that's what we've always dealt with, and we've tried to avoid it, the founders, with this Republican federalist system, but boy, I'm afraid that the ancients were pretty wise and that we're headed in a direction where I don't think Trump's going to stop it. I don't know how anybody's going to say to the individual American, you're responsible for your own destiny, your own fate. You got to be self-reliant. I just don't see that happening. Not with this.
Speaking of your forthcoming book on World War II. Brett Stevens had a piece in the Wall Street Journal earlier this week suggesting that Russia, Turkey, China, Iran is hearkening back to the rise of dictators in the 30s, and ultimately we know how that culminated. Is that a comparison that you would subscribe to as well?
Yeah, I read that. I think he was trying to say that maybe that they're actually coordinating a little bit in the way the Axis powers like Mussolini and Hitler and the Japanese militarists, while they weren't directly coordinating, they did have affinities. They talked. They signed these Pact of Steel. So I think that's what he's saying, that he was worried that Russia's in the Middle East. It's coordinating with Iran. Russia and China have a non-aggression pact. It's all predicated on the simple thesis that Barack Obama, either psychologically or ethically, morally, he didn't think that the United States deserved its preeminence abroad. So he felt that if we led from behind and withdrew, the Arab Spring would give back power to the Arabs. Iran had a natural area of responsibility in the Middle East. Russia could reclaim its Soviet republics. China could reestablish a hegemony in the South China Sea. All that was predicated on the idea that, the post-war order wasn't all that good. That's what he thought, I think. The United States had no business telling other countries, and I think the result of it is we're going to be in the most dangerous, probably the most dangerous 5 months era since Jimmy Carter's 1980 fiasco, because all these countries are now saying we've been playing poker with this guy, and he's sort of an easy guy to beat, and he's going to be out of power, so we might as well cash in our chips when we can.
Well, and doesn't this speak to Russia launching strikes in Syria from Iran, and Iran yesterday vowing that encroaching U.S. ships will be severely punished and shots fired? This is some of what Brett Stevens is talking about and what you're referencing, right?
So. I think the Iranians are saying, why would the President of the United States lie on our behalf about the $400 million in cash and say that he couldn't send money when he just sent $1.2 billion via bank wire? So if he's doing that for us, and why are the Chinese saying, why does he let us build these islands right in the middle of the South China Sea to adjudicate the naval traffic? And that means that they're all thinking, they're kind of bewildered. They've seen this for 8 years, and they're saying, whatever it is, it's good for us. And if we're North Korea and sending a missile, or if we're Russia massing troops in Ukraine, or with the Chinese with these islands, we better continue and do it fast, because we don't know who the next president might be.
And how does ISIS factor into this? Again, another story yesterday, 11 police officers dead, 78 injured in a car bomb in Turkey that targeted police. So in terms of that access, Turkey's included, at least in Brett Stevens' formulation, and how does ISIS factor in?
Well, we had a special relationship with Turkey, Obama did, just like he thought he was going to have with China. But the problem with him is that he displays both weakness and contempt for his friends. So he goes over there to Turkey and he lets them do whatever they want vis-a-vis Israel at the beginning of his term, and then he lectures them. And he did the same thing with China. And people will be lectured if you're strong, but if you're weak, they want you to be quiet. So the combination of Obama's sanctimonious sermons while he was weak infuriated a lot of people. And as far as ISIS, it's the same thing. He didn't do anything to them, but he talked down to them as JVs, or they're no more dangerous than, I think he said, falling down in your bathroom. And they thought, wow, this is a weird guy. The President of the United States says that we're weak and we have no power, and yet he won't even use the word radical Islam. He's so nice to us, he calls us violent extremists. And that is, I think we underestimate the psychological element that a lot of our enemies really feel contempt for somebody that they see is a leader and yet doesn't want to lead his own country. Every leader has his country's self-interest, and when they see Obama doesn't, they sort of, instead of developing, appreciation for his magnanimity, they develop contempt for his weakness.
Weakness is provocative. Victor Davis Hanson, Hoover Institute, National Review. Victor Davis Hanson, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And you joined us on the Turnkey.Pro answer line.